Now, who would Nye Bevan vote for? It's not a question you hear every day, but it resonates in the Welsh town of Blaenau Gwent. Bevan represented the constituency when he was constructing the health service in 1948 and was succeeded when he died in 1960 by Michael Foot. So you might think that Labour would be a shoo-in in the by-election being held this week. But Labour lost the seat at the general election of 2005 to an independent after a row about the imposition of an all-women shortlist on the seat. Well, can they win it back? Adrian, anchor of the politics show Wales, has been reading the runes.
Nye Bevan, Labour hero, creator of the National Health Service, was born and his politics forged in these valleys.
If anywhere is the spiritual home of the Labour movement, it's here. These stones remember Nye Bevan, and they look down on the valley's communities that make up Blaenau Gwent. But recent histories turned this formerly rock-solid Labour seat upside down.
I do hereby declare that the said Peter John Law is duly elected as Member of Parliament for the said constituency.
That recent history was made at last May's general election, when Peter Law, a veteran Labour politician and former cabinet member in the Welsh Assembly, stood against his own party. He fought the campaign as an independent, despite suffering from a brain tumour, and he overturned Labour's majority of nearly 20,000. The reason for his bitter break with Labour? The party's decision to use an all-woman shortlist. Labour's fight back is underway in deadly earnest.
OK.
It started with an apology and has continued in that vein, acknowledging mistakes and promising to listen. It's a campaign with a decidedly old Labour flavour, opposition to many key new Labour policies, and the celebration of traditional socialist values, embodied in visits from traditional socialist big names.
So do you think that you've come to Blaenau Gwent, do you think that the people here are ready to come back to Labour?
Yeah, I think they should. I mean, we've been to a phase, and now we've got a candidate from the valleys, and I would say that they've picked somebody on an open list, which was very important. I was one of the people that were in favour of an open list at the beginning, so I'm not speaking without the book. So we've got an open list, we've got an open candidate, and we've picked one from the valleys, and he's got good credentials, and so as the Assembly candidate.
Thanks a lot. Give me a sticker. Get the sticker on him. Cheers, then.
Labour's candidates and their supporters jostle with the independents in Ebbw Vale. Labour's campaign colours are red and yellow. The independents are in yellow and red.
For many years, many decades even, these people would have been campaigning alongside each other. Now they're opponents. In some ways, it's like a family dispute, and like family disputes, that can be pretty bitter.
The independent supporters who've banded together in a loose-knit group known as Blaenau Gwent People's Voice don't believe Labour's learned any lessons. Many of them left or were expelled along with Peter Law, including Rex Herbert, a Labour councillor for more than half a century, who'd worked alongside the last 3 Labour MPs, including Bevan himself.
I'm sure Nye Bevan would have supported the rebels because he was a natural rebel.
We know what the independents are against, but what are the independents for?
We are obviously for listening to the people. We want to know what people want. We want a better health service. The waiting lists are dreadful, and the complaints that we take about cleanliness even in hospitals is appalling. This is the last thing we want. And we were very concerned, I'm sure, last week, and most people in this area are, about the statement of Mr. Brown. They're going to spend a lot more money on an extra modern nuclear deterrent.
So let me introduce to you, our listeners, and our audience here of Blaenau Gwent voters, our panel of...
This is a double election for both Parliament and the Welsh Assembly, and the Assembly candidates have been brought together for a radio debate. They include Peter Law's widow, Trish. Her husband held what was often the casting vote in the Assembly, where the seats are evenly split between Labour and the opposition parties.
I don't feel very happy about Labour, especially being out of work.
This is not fertile ground for the Welsh nationalists, Plaid Cymru. They only won 2% of the vote in the last general election. But Plaid has been positioning itself for some time as the left-wing alternative to Labour and needs support in places like this if it's to prosper in the long term.
Got a long haul, we're starting from a relatively low base, and the most important thing I think in this by-election for us is to maximise our vote and to make sure that we build ourselves as a party to be an alternative to Labour, not only in this by-election but in years to come.
Good morning, ma'am. Do you live locally?
Yes, I do.
Unlike Plaid, the Liberal Democrats actually have a foothold in Blaenau Gwent. They have 3 representatives on the local council. But they too think they should be able to mop up those disaffected Labour voters.
Supporting my colleagues there? We're second to the Labour family battling amongst themselves in the parliamentary elections. We're going up all the time in the valleys. The reality is people have to make a choice. Do they vote for a party that can deliver at Westminster, in Cardiff and locally? Or do they vote for an individual who in the end has very little ability to influence the outcome?
Yeah, good. Well, I always take my hat off to by-election candidate. I was a by-election candidate, so I feel
It's a brave Conservative that ventures into these valleys. People here have long memories and blame the Tories for the legacy of high unemployment and its associated ill health. But that's not stopping them putting up a spirited fight.
Well, there are Conservative voters here, believe it or not. Also, things are changing. Politics is changing in Britain. People are beginning to change their minds about the parties. The old bedrock loyalty to Labour is breaking down here. They're interested again, people who voted Labour in the past, in what the Conservatives are saying.
History hangs heavily over the valleys of Blaenau Gwent. But times are changing. Once mighty industries have gone. New prospects are opening up. Old ways of life have been snatched away, but the vanished steelworks are now in the process of being transformed. And the old political loyalties are loosening. But have they changed forever?
Adrian Masters reporting, and a full list of candidates standing in Blaenau Gwent is on the screen there now. Just to also say that it's also available on the Politics Show website at